Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our Maniac podcast Unscripted, episode
5.
And today we'll be talking about the cars of our childhood.
Yes. Well, there are a lot to lists, from our childhood. Like what
Mm.
was your childhood car? You first, Chris.
Well, for me, I grew up with two cars at first. The first was my dad's iconic, well, at least to my family, the
Mm-hmm.
1996 Lancer GLXi,
Oh yeah, I remember that
which he
car.
famously named EL because of the
Mm-mm.
fact that it was a German-styled Lancer
Mm-mm.
from the bottom to top, in the sense that he actually replicated the German style. From the door
Mm-hmm.
panels to the front fenders to even the side panels and the interior.
Mm-mm.
The only thing that's not German about the car
Mm-hmm.
that he tuned were the seats. I remember the seats were, just pure leather. I just forgot if, they were Momo seats or
Yeah.
but I do remember that the shifter was Momo and as well as the steering wheel.
Wow.
It was really a full, OEM tune. And his exhaust, I just don't know what brand it was, but it had this really, unique exhaust note when it's really, really low.
Mm-mm.
And the second one that I would say was really an equal OEM tune was the Space Wagon. We had a classic Space Wagon
Mm-hmm.
90s.
I wish I saw that though.
Yeah, it was quite the car to look at. It was same motor as the Lancer, I believe, because they sounded exactly alike, especially
Mm.
with the exhaust. Except the Lancer had a lower tone, I remember.
Mm.
They both had BBS
Really?
five-star rims, yes. The
Wow.
star-shaped ones, yeah,
Mm.
all original.
Damn.
And the Space Wagon was also gunmetal gray, really gunmetal gray
Wow.
finish. Dad had it painted himself. And from what I remember, it
Yeah.
was more of a family car than the Lancer because the seats were at least.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Did it
leather.
have 7 seats?
Oh yes, yes, it was
Oh.
very spacious. Quite similar in size to the Innova, but I'd say it's a little smaller.
Yeah, and it's also lower, obviously.
Yeah, and then the car that I would say that taught me about responsibility that came in was the Chevrolet Cassia, if you still remember that
Oh
model.
yeah, very underrated Chevrolet. That came out in the early 2000s, right?
Yes, we bought it around 2003, and I would say that the car is actually very, very unreliable.
Oh gosh.
It really taught me about responsibility because when it was just about I'll never forget when it was just about 8 years old, it just it broke down. Lots of things just broke down constantly. The aircon hose kept breaking down,
Wow.
the clutch, and we had to replace the parts almost monthly because of how breakable they were.
And it was basically a rebatch Suzuki. I just don't remember
Mm.
what Suzuki that
I
was.
forgot the exact model, but yes, you're right about that.
Mm-mm.
That's why all the parts we actually had to have it from Suzuki itself because Chevrolet themselves told us, sorry, we're running out of parts for your cash. And that's why that car really taught me how to be responsible and how to, appreciate every car because that car kept breaking down.
Yes, oh my
Phew,
goodness.
I remember you had a lot of cars during your childhood, right?
Not really a lot of cars per se, but as far as I can remember, back in the early 2000s, yeah, early 2000s to
Mm.
mid, we had an owner type Jeep. Initially, before based on what my grandparents, it had like a Mitsubishi engine underneath, but then they had to engine swap it with a 4K, a Toyota 4K engine just to make it more fuel efficient. So yeah, one of my memories about that owner type Jeep is, it was one of those vehicles that brought me to preschool,
Mm.
even in my early elementary days. But then, yeah, it started to, age. Obviously, it's been around since the late 1980s, and then there comes the Toyota Light Ace, which came a bit later than the owner type Jeep, 1991 or 92.
Yeah.
It's a maroon color.
Mm.
It's like I don't know if it's a base model, but like as far as I can remember, it had black bumpers. It was dark red or maroon, something like that. And
Mm.
that's where I got most of my music tastes. Actually, since it had a lot of cassette tapes on it. Like there was Boyzone, the boy
Oh man,
bands, the
same.
Beatles. And then, nandun din yung cassette ng mom ko na no, Love Actually. I don't know if you know that movie, but it's like an English film, a British film from 2003, and they had really wonderful soundtracks. I that's one of the most memorable parts of my childhood. So yeah, the Toyota Light Ace. It is actually one of the most pivotal part of my childhood. Also back in the early 2000s, it's like that's the only vehicle that we would use. Going to farther places. Whenever we
Mm,
go out to outings, to beaches.
yes.
Like I had really sentimental memories with that van. That little red van.
Same. It's always the childhood cars that strike us most. Like I still remember the colors of both cars
Yes.
more than anything else. Like Lancer was close to sky blue, but Dad always says it has a mixture of aqua as well. While the
Hmm.
gunmetal gray space wagon, of course, and the silver
My
Cassia.
God.
Well, you still remember your maroon, you know,
Yes.
light ace. And at the same time, dude, you reminded me the classic cassette tapes, and not to mention, did you
Uh,
also have those classic CD cases, complete in
yes,
black?
yes. We only had those CD, cases when we had our Isuzu Altera
Oh
back
my
in
gosh.
2005. Well, let's talk about it later. But then,
Mm.
the Light Ace. Well, yeah. We had it up until 2007.
Oh,
Yeah. Mid 2006 or no, 2000 later 2006. It started to like show up its age. It started breaking down.
likewise.
It made us break down along the road going to Tagaytay,
Mm.
and it traumatized me.
Same with the Kasha. Even if it was from 2003, we had to sell it around 2012 because of how much damage it had ever since it
Oh
was
my
8 years
gosh.
old.
I could remember. It was it was raining. Like it kept on breaking down along Tagaytay. My
Same. I mean, you
goodness.
ever get those instances wherein even the jeepney drivers help you push it along the road? I did. I had to experience that.
It traumatized the hell out of me. Yeah.
Same. It came to a point where my mom would often be crying, like, no, we have to sell this car soon because, yeah, it happened almost on a weekly basis already as they age.
Oh my gosh.
That's why,
And yeah,
but it's very hard as well to let go of these cars, right? Even if they keep breaking down.
indeed. Well, to be frankly honest with you, I wasn't really able to appreciate that light ace that much, growing up. Since yeah, I had terrible experiences with it. It kept breaking down. It wasn't really my favorite back when I was younger. But then, looking back, like, man, I regret, not liking this light ace. My gosh.
Yeah, even me, I tend to think of it like, how I wish we had more time to actually appreciate it. Like, I really wish that we could see these cars at our age right
Yeah.
now, wherein we appreciate cars the most in our lives.
And yeah, going now to our Isuzu Altera. Yeah, I can vividly remember, the
Mm.
time we got it. The first time we got that SUV, it is the first generation Isuzu Altera.
Oh,
Back in '05, that was August 2005. 1st of August, actually. I can vividly remember,
every detail.
yes, every detail when we got it. Like during that time it was raining. I was in first grade, and then I can remember, I was playing around the showroom of Isuzu. That was in Isuzu Pasig. So yeah, getting in to that SUV for the first time, like I saw that the SUV had, TV screens. It was playing The Incredibles. You remember the film?
Yeah, that's shot superhero film.
Yes, man. I had a lot of vivid childhood memories with that SUV. We had it for a good 10 years. Or no, less than 10 years.
I
But
agree.
yeah, it was short lived. I actually loved that SUV, to be honest. Like it was our first taste of, SUV. Like I thought back then that it was so luxurious because of how wide that thing is.
I remember.
Yep. Like it is actually the biggest in its class, if I'm not mistaken. Like it's wider than the Fortuner of its time, the
Yes.
Toyota Fortuner. And yeah, it was almost as big as like the Ford Explorer of its era. So
Mm,
yeah, um, I thought it looked like a Cadillac Escalade or Ford Expedition. Expedition.
very similar,
Yeah,
yes.
it had similar vibes, but it's not like them. Like it's not its class.
Has
But
its
it,
own identity.
yeah. but it felt like the king of the road, as far as I can
Mm,
remember. And so yeah, in 2007 we had to let go of our light ace, and so
mm.
um, our relative handed us down their Toyota Corolla, which we had for a very long time, up until now actually. But then, circumstances, we had to sell it. Unfortunately, well, I don't know if we would sell it, but like, it probably is just about time to be, let go. It's just about time to be how do I say
To
this?
be given away, or
Yeah,
yeah. It actually makes me sad because of the fact that that's the very first car I saw you in.
actually, yes. And Um, that is actually one of the cars that made me appreciate old cars, you
Yeah,
know?
and when I rode it, I felt like I was in a literal time capsule of a collector's item, honestly, because
Hmm.
I love how it was restored.
Not really restored, but yeah. I'm not sure if Kuya Wilson restored it per se, but as far as I can remember,
Mm,
he changed a few parts on it, like the wheels. It is the OEM Plus
mm.
sort of built, like he installed those OEM GLI wheels from the later Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, and not to mention the engine swap, right? It has a different car's engine,
Yes, it had a 4EFE swap, back in 2012.
belonging to a Starlet, right?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
1.3 liter
Mm.
4EFE, naturally aspirated, fuel injected. So yeah, I feel emotional thinking of that car, to be honest.
Especially going back into our very first cars that we've encountered. Yes,
Mm-mm,
I feel the same way because nothing hits harder than the very first cars that you see and appreciate as enthusiasts, actually.
mm-mm.
No matter how simple they are. I mean, I humbly admit that I never had a starter sports car that I could brag,
Yeah,
wow, it has 400 plus horsepower. No.
yeah.
In fact, these cars were all dailies. I grew up with daily cars that my family just knew how to modify very well. So it can create the illusion that they're actually sports cars, but they're not.
Mm-mm.
And I guess it's really the memories that create the true value that these cars have with us and not
Uh-oh.
how fast they are. I mean, when people say a certain thing that, oh, my car is really fast, it's an Audi
Mm-mm.
R8 or GTR sounding mini. No, you can't say that. Yeah, you have to really, remember the memories that you have with these
Exactly.
cars
And
to
it's
say that
about,
it's really
yeah.
special.
Mm.
Yes.
And it's about the character of the car. It doesn't have to be like
Mm,
a sports car, as you said. It doesn't need to be a 500 horsepower plus car, if you know what I mean. Like, um,
yes.
the character matters. Like, and also the build, also the way it was taken care of, the stories that you had, the memories that you had with that car, and how you developed your relationship with that car,
Yeah.
all the hardships, all the success, that's what makes the car awesome.
And I mean, it makes me tear up just remembering every single memory that you spent with it, every minute. Like, it's just now that you don't have it, especially when they're already gone,
Mm-mm.
you're like, how I wish I spent more moments with it before it was actually gone.
That's how I felt with the Toyota Light Ace, apparently.
Mm. Likewise with the Blue Lancer and the Space Wagon, I felt really bad that we had
Mm.
to sell it. But, like they say, cars are like, they're as much as possible material things that we have to let go of. But
Yeah.
the magical thing, to quote Jeremy Clarkson, is that they're more than just, heaps of metal. They actually create memories with us. And that's why I also believe that cars shouldn't be museum pieces wherein you just
Yes.
see them on display. I know that it somewhat preserves the car, but you have to use them to really make them
Tama.
have that value.
And
Yeah.
I have no regrets I have no regrets with that Corolla, to be honest with you. Like, it's well driven. I've driven it myself. I've been on it since my childhood. Um, Probably my only regret is,
Mm.
I won't be able to, like, you know, restore it myself, modify it myself, because, circumstances, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and what makes me, saddened about that is that I had a similar thing for the Lancer. Although sadly, I never got to even drive it. That's why my father was personally like, okay, as a consolation, you can try and drive, the 2011 Lancer EX naman, which is
Mm-mm,
technically a tribute to that sky blue Lancer GLXI. So what he did was he transferred, the speakers, the subwoofers that the old Lancer had and the EL badge
mm-mm.
to make me feel like I still have it. It's still with me somehow.
I could actually feel that on your Lancer. Like, I don't know if they're still producing that model, but yeah, I think that's probably the last classic quote unquote Lancer
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because most Mitsubishis, well, yeah, we know what it is.
Yeah, and like basically, my our Lancer EX rather is, technically the last of its kind before the Lancers quote unquote got extinct temporarily.
Yeah, I mean not totally extinct, but like it's just not the same as it was back in the 90s,
Oh
2000s.
yes, they'll always have a special place in my heart, personally. I mean, looking at the cars back then during our childhood, did you notice the differences were in cars before were all about the fun more than the technological advances?
Yes, like they were all about the driving experience, you know.
The hardships, the power steering, not to
Oh,
mention.
and not to mention the material quality of, let's say, how it is well put together. It's not like, the technological,
I mean, like I also noticed that even the seats before, if you notice, they were multicolored compared to the ones now, and they were very comfortable. Like even the smell of the
Mm-mm.
car, it really smelled like every car had, their own identity and speciality.
Exactly. Like, if I were to compare our Corolla versus,
Doubt this.
most newer
Mhm.
cars today, like, I noticed some, you know, qualities about the Corolla that are lacking with most newer cars today. Like,
Mm,
um, most of the materials are padded. Like, even the dashboard is padded. The panels are padded. Like,
yes.
even though they're not really genuine leather, they are of high quality.
And like most cars now have, the same color
Mm-mm.
scheme. So I think right now they're more focused on
Tama.
safety and I guess having a generally produced tradition in terms of
Mm-mm.
how they make the cars. Yeah.
And yeah, it's not even a top of the line car, but like the materials are very high quality in that car. Grabe.
Speaking of childhood, what were your dream
Oh
cars
yeah.
back then?
Um, so yeah, starting with the American muscle cars. Yeah. Um, most of us grew up with, let's say, yeah, we grew up with Fast and the Furious,
Yeah.
and well, that was in the late 2000s, wherein I got to appreciate, classic American muscle
Mm.
cars. And I am also obsessed with my no, I was obsessed with Supernatural. I don't know if you've watched that
Oh
TV
yes,
series. Yes,
the classic Chevy.
Impala.
Yes,
Yes,
Impala. I remember the black one.
yes. My mom and I would watch that at night. When she
Oh
was
my
still
gosh,
there. Childhood memories.
goosebumps.
Yes. Well, it's actually not Fast and Furious that got me into muscle
Mm.
cars per se. It's actually that TV series.
Oh,
Mm-mm. So yeah, American muscle cars and yeah, some regular cars like the Toyota Tamaro FX. For some reason, I don't know why I'm so obsessed with Toyota Tamaro FXs, of that time period. Like, um, when they still had, you know, when they
spirit.
were still in
Mm.
service. I can remember back in the 2000s, right? Those Tamaro FXs are still in service.
They were really tough.
They
I
are
really
tough as
remember.
nails, and they felt like, a mini Land Cruiser.
Actually, yes. And at the same time, they're the type of cars when I'd be intimidated looking at because they're the types where you'd often see gashes, scratches, but they're still running.
But for some reason, during my childhood, I would be excited whenever we would commute on a Tamaro FX. I don't know why, but it's really satisfying to be in a Toyota Tamaro FX.
Sadly, I never got to experience that. I always wondered how it's like. How was it like?
It was like, the diesel was quite, grumbly,
Hmm.
you know. It's not like a Jeep, but like, it has that distinct diesel sound or gasoline sound.
Wow.
Yeah.
So compared to an Innova, this thing sounds way more like a Jeep or a truck, right?
So yeah, something like that. Very, very much utilitarian, I must say. It's not like, most diesel engines nowadays, like they are so refined. They are, um, CRDIs and whatnot.
If I'll be honest, many of the SUVs nowadays seem the same in the sense that they don't exactly feel like Jeeps anymore. They
Mm.
mostly feel luxury. focused.
I mean, it's still a good thing though. Like
Mm,
they are more refined, more fuel efficient, of course,
yes.
and they are friendlier to the
Friendlier,
planet.
yes.
Yeah,
Quote unquote.
yes, and they're also powerful.
And I guess they have the easy accessibility wherein the wheels don't feel like they're 100 plus pounds anymore.
Mm.
Like before, when even the Lancer, I remember every time my mom would steer, be like, you're steering, and I'm like, Mom, it's okay, kaya mo yan. Or at times, I didn't even have to help my mom. Mom, it's okay, we can pull it together. We can pull it together.
My
And
gosh.
thank that you look at my back, it's
Oh
sweating, it's
my
so
gosh.
powy. So
So
yeah,
yeah,
those are the times.
and another thing, JDM. Well, one of the things that got me into JDM cars is, of course, like I said in the previous episodes, the
Mm,
Nissan Skyline, the Ken Mary, just like what we got here.
mm.
I grew up obsessed, watching those vintage Japanese TV commercials. Back in the late 2000s. I was still in the fourth grade. Like
Oh,
um, I would sneak into my sister's room just to watch those TV commercials.
oh.
From the 70s, 80s.
So your sister loved watching these commercials, or
No,
you just?
I would research them on YouTube. I don't know how I got
Mm,
access to it, but like, man, I just grew up obsessed with, the Japanese vintage Japanese TV aesthetic, wherein,
ah,
yeah, I would see those really unheard of Japanese cars, like for instance, the Nissan Sylvia S13.
classic.
Yes. Actually, one of my memories with that Nissan S13, the Nissan Sylvia was,
Mm,
there was this Japanese TV commercial wherein they are using this classic 1967 song, "A Whiter Shade of Pale" by Procol Harum. And
yes.
yeah, it was playing in the radio this morning. I don't know if you heard that song a while ago,
Sadly, no. I wasn't able to.
but yeah, I was singing to it. It reminded me of that TV commercial.
Also, speaking of old commercials, it reminded me of one of our old vintage episodes wherein, we had to review the classic Corolla commercial with the child, and then you had to wake me up because I was like,
Fun to drive.
and then you're like, Chris, I'm so sorry. Wait. Oh, you remember those times?
Yes, yes, yes,
So amusing. Have
absolutely.
you ever thought that Corollas can actually fly? Those are the old times.
My
But,
goodness.
cars nowadays in the commercials, they're more on the features. Like, wow, they have these new Mavic engines. They have safety features, right?
And yeah, they would put those rather, touchy, or let's say yung mga ano ba, like they would inject family values,
Oh,
love stories and
yes.
whatnot.
Or like based on a true
Yes,
story.
yes.
Like that's a trend nowadays. But I honestly want, the
Yes.
old commercials back where it was all about how cars are outlandishly, futuristic in the commercials when you'd see them flying, or you'd see a couple taking pictures like the Ken Mary commercial.
Yes, and they have almost no plot per se, like
There's no plot, yeah. It's just all about how fancy the car is and how they vibe with the people.
mm-mm. But yeah, they do have the character, most of those old school vintage TV commercials.
Mm. And unlike, present cars, if you notice, it's like back then cars really had their own identity, but now
Mm-mm.
it's almost like, I don't mean any offenses, but they almost seem like they're almost the same car in a way.
True. Like,
Many of the new cars.
I don't know, like you can add all of those, state of the art latest features, but
Mm-mm.
like the driving experience, uh it cannot be replicated from an old school,
Not at all. Mm-mm.
So yeah, going back to nostalgia. So yeah, I got into European cars as well. Well, that is in the later parts already.
Oh yes.
I grew up, for some reason I did not appreciate Mercedes Benz for some reason. I don't know why, but like it's maybe
Mm.
because of some certain Mercedes models, but like I grew up being obsessed with the pre Daimler Chrysler era
Oh
Mercedes Benzes,
yes.
like those from the 1970s, 1980s, 90s, wherein they are solidly built, you know.
Really solidly to the point that they're so intimidating and boxy.
Yes.
My gosh.
And BMWs of the 1980s, 1990s, they're solidly built, man.
I mean, not to mention our favorite that we both share, the crush that we have, that
Oh yeah,
E30.
the E30. I wish to drive an M3 one of these days. The E30 M3.
I
That's my
mean,
dream car.
I admit I never drove the M3 variant, but driving the E30 in general, it was
Hmm.
amazing. The 1988 model, it felt like everything that you could think of in an old car we're in. They really epitomize having fun. Like even if the car
Hmm.
doesn't steer as responsive as the new ones, even if it had weaker brakes, and even if the cars were very boxy and well, I'd say less safer, right, than the new ones,
Mm-mm.
definitely. You
Naman.
really felt like you were playing a video game wherein it really felt like, you were there for the fun more than just
Hmm.
being safe. Unlike in the new cars, like when you're driving your, like for example, even your Altis or Roger, the newer cars, it's like I just feel, yeah, you ever get this feeling like it's just too safe, too secure for you,
Exactly.
too easy?
Exactly.
Yes.
Felt that with our Altis, versus our, Corolla, wherein
Hmm.
it's manual everything, right?
Yeah, it's like now cars do more things for you than back then where everything was in your hands,
Mm-mm.
so to speak.
And yeah, another thing that got me into cars was, the not only the internet age actually, but
Mm.
also, for some reason, I grew up obsessed watching old Filipino movies. I don't know why, but like, I would sneak in to watch Cinema One. I don't know if you know that
Yeah,
channel.
of course, I always love, especially the Dolphy movies.
Yes.
Remember his classic box type Lancer
Oo.
with Babalusig? Ano ba yan? Tunog Inodoro. Anong klaseng susi yan? Pangkarne ni Norte yan eh.
And
Remember
then,
that?
the parts just slowly are slowly being dismantled.
I remember when he just pulled out the shifter from that specific scene. He was like, "Eh!" I was like, what's that?
But yeah, old Filipino movies, that's where I also get my dream cars. Like for example, old Mercedes Benzes, like that is one of the common cars in, Filipino films wherein,
Mm.
there would be this one contrabida who would be chauffeured in a classic Mercedes Benz.
It never fails to be Mercedes-Benz, most often than not, especially in Filipino
Yes.
movies.
And also, old school Toyotas, Mitsubishi, Lancer box types, man.
Mm-mm.
And Pajeros.
Alam na Pajeros. I always see them in movies, especially in movies that have action in them. They always use Pajeros or Hiluxes.
Oh yes. And L300s.
Oh yeah, the famous kidnapping car. Even worse than Wade Lim.
Oh my goodness.
Wade Lim has nothing with the L300s. I mean, those are the scariest looking things that you'd see in cinema and in real life.
Well, Wadelim doesn't have an L300, but he has an LC300.
Could that mean that Wade Lim is also fond of L300s? There's a new Wade Lim conspiracy. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Wade Lim. I'm so sorry. Never
Yeah.
mind, Wade Lim.
But yeah, going back to old school Filipino films, yeah.
Yes.
Um, there's this certain car that I grew up obsessed with.
Mm.
Also an American car. It is an what do you call this? A classic American pickup truck, a
Wow.
1955 Ford F100.
Wow! I
Yes,
actually remember this.
it
Yes.
was painted in red, as far as I can remember, and
Mm.
it kind of reminded me of that certain pickup truck, the F-150 Lightning, right,
Oh
from the Fast and
yes.
Furious. Yeah.
Yes.
It came out from the movie Kuya
Kuya.
in 2004. It's
Yes,
a
it was.
Regal Entertainment movie. As far as I can remember, it
Mm-mm.
starred Kogo Domingo, Richard
Gutierrez.
Gutierrez, Angel Oxine, as far as I can remember, and Oyasota, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
The era of blocky, heavy-duty trucks with heavy steering.
Oh man. But yeah, I can vividly remember that film. Like, heartbreakingly, that truck was, totaled in a, car crash.
But
So
then,
yeah.
with trucks like that, wouldn't you want to take? I mean, they're the types of trucks where you're like, I could break anything. I'm unbreakable. But then, yeah, that movie, showed that even tough trucks like that can just break if you're not responsible enough.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Chris, I've been mentioning most of my childhood cars. How about yours?
Okay, me, you would find that I am, among anyone or among most of my friends to be the number one Paul Walker enthusiast because the guy that really got me into car culture and a lot of why I am who I am today with cars is because of
Mm.
Paul. The very first car that I fell in love with ever as a child, I would never forget, is his 1995 Eclipse.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
The classic green Eclipse, which ironically, fun fact, actually has just 150 horsepower. Nothing really too special. It doesn't even have the Mitsubishi Evo motor. However, it's still for me my very first love because even if technically the movie didn't use its original fun fact, the movie didn't use its original sound. It actually borrowed
Mm.
sounds from the
Yes.
series. Because when you hear it, I don't know about others there, but if you notice, it sounds very VTEC like, right?
Right, right, right.
Because even just the two normal Eclipses that are tuned, they sound more like Evos, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I first fell in love with that because, it was, I will never forget the year 2001, the peak era we're in. If you know, the underground cars came in,
Mm.
underglow, flashy green color,
Yes, the
vinyls,
tuner car era, right?
lowered nitrous oxide, and not to mention Fast and the Furious is also the franchise that introduced nitrous oxide.
Mm-mm.
And what really got me though into tuner cars in that movie later on, which really shocked me, was the Toyota Supra.
Oh yeah, the Mark IV Super, right? The
Yeah, the
orange one.
legendary Mark IV Supra. It's the Supra, yes, it is. And
And
it's definitely a rocket. Even in real life, 554
mm,
horsepower
I
in that thing.
was it the car that dared a Ferrari into a race?
Yes, I remember the Ferrari guy. This was the very movie I believe that made people, never underestimate any more tuner cars. And it
Yes.
actually set the tuner car straight because at that very scene, I remember the Ferrari guy was boastfully saying, "More than you can afford, pal, Ferrari." And once Vin Diesel just said, "Smoke him," and Paul Walker went for it, he was smoked. I mean, he was just smoked. It comes to show that no matter the brand or make, it don't matter. It's how you take care of the car. It's how you tune the car. In fact, that's what, Vin Diesel and Paul Walker coined in the movie we're in. It's all
Mm,
about, how much you love the car. It's more on the car, not the driver, to quote
exactly.
Dominic Toretto from the movie, you know? And my third and most iconic love, which is right here, the Too Fast, Too Furious
Ah,
1999
yes.
Skyline GTR R34, the car that made me fall in love with the color blue and white. But of course, the car is actually blue and silver.
Mm.
Mostly made me fall in love with it though was the iconic sound and the
Oh
power it
yeah.
had. And remember
Um,
how it just flew off that bridge and the nitrous purge scenes where it just throw out
oh yeah.
nitrous?
I remember those, but not vividly. But yeah.
Not to mention it got me into, rap music, Too Fast Too Furious, because I remember the opening scene wherein Act the Fool was just playing. Really, really badass. And not to mention, in that movie as well, I also fell in love. It's really where I fell in love with the Mitsubishi Lancer, because later in the movie he used an Evo 7, a yellow
Mm-mm.
and blue Evo 7, which also showed that it doesn't matter what car you're driving, it's mostly on the driver because I remembered he actually beat a pack. If you remember that scene wherein he beat a pack of exotic and American muscle
Oh
cars,
yeah.
he beat the Camaro with that Lancer.
Oh my goodness.
It was shocking. And well, moving forward, there was actually one muscle car though that I fell in love with first, which was Eleanor herself
Oh
from
yeah.
Gone in
Gone
60
in 60
Seconds.
seconds. I remember that film.
I'm pretty sure you're also in love with that Eleanor car.
My
Yes.
gosh. I remember that Shelby. I don't know if it's Shelby.
Shelby GT350, but
Oh
they
yeah.
claim it's a GT500, but really, in reality, fun fact, it's a GT350.
Really,
Yeah.
really.
Mhm. Although the movie depicts to be a GT500 because, of course, they wanted to make the car really stand out.
Mm-mm.
But it made me fall in love with muscle cars at first because I'll never forget how the car was just so unique compared to the other boxy muscle cars that I've seen.
Mm-mm.
So like as a kid, I was like, wow, this is a whole different muscle car. It's not like the Chevelle wherein it's just heavy
Wow.
duty and hardcore to look at, or the Impala where it's just boxy. This one had fog lamps in the middle of the bumper, and I was like, what is that? And the wheels. Not to mention, if you
The
remember the
wheels as well.
nitrous.
Oh,
Oh, the nitrous in the shifter part. It's like, what the heck? And it even said, go, baby, go. So you could tell the car was really fast, you know?
Gosh.
And not to mention, Gone in 60 Seconds was also the movie that got me, I'll never forget, that got me into, loving cars to a mystical or personal level.
Mm-mm.
Because I remember when Nicolas Cage was oftentimes talking to Eleanor, begging Eleanor not to stop. Be like, please, please don't do this to me. Please don't do this to me. Or he would, I even got the tradition from him wherein he would just, be alone with the car at
Mm-mm.
times and just talk to it. I do the same with my own cars, actually, and treat it
Yeah.
like it were a real person. I mean, you do the same mostly,
Yes, I talk to myself a lot.
right?
And my car.
Even Tom Huang. I know Tom Huang, brother. I remember your story with
Oo
the
nga, no?
Z. I remember when he told it not to break down, but it
Oo.
did. It saved him. Likewise, that's why my connection with cars were really built through these three iconic men, Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, and Nicolas
Mhm.
Cage. But really, the brunt of it came from Paul Walker because Paul Walker, I believe, was really the most hardcore Fast and the Furious
Uh,
character in the movie
yeah,
franchise. And moving forward, I also, fell in love with a movie called Driver, which was built in 1978,
driver.
if you
I
know that movie. It's a classic chase. It's like the thing that came before even Fast and the Furious and done
mm,
60 seconds. It was the movie we're in. It prioritized, stealing cars, being a
mm.
wheelman.
I'll watch that.
Yes, you should. It's a very good classic movie. And it made me fall in love with the Bandit itself, the Firebird, the
Mm.
Pontiac Firebird.
And another classic American muscle car movie would be Bullet, right?
Bullet! Yes! Mr.
I,
McQueen himself made me
I
fall in love with the Mustang even more.
I had a crush on that car.
I swear it's just perfect. The shade of green, the way it
Yes.
was built, and I remember the rims were like straight cut black, right?
Yeah. It made me fall in love with, the idea of American muscle
And
cars.
would you believe he was being chased? You remember that scene where he was being chased around with the Charger of all cars?
I don't remember, but yeah,
68, I believe.
I do remember that movie, but I haven't watched it per se.
Yeah, I remember the scene wherein, he's being chased by the Charger. It comes to show that it's all about the driver as well, actually.
Mm-mm.
Because if you remember how skilled McQueen was behind the wheel of that Mustang, it was like magic.
Mm-mm.
And that's a joke because the Mustang is actually very hard to drive. So yeah, I mean, eventually from there, when I was already in my teens, I eventually learned to appreciate all car types, like be it
Mm-mm.
pickups like our Hilux. I learned how to, appreciate even compact cars like the
Mm.
Mirage. Special mention to, the car that I say never died in my life because it will always come back to life because, it really solidified how we car owners can have, this mystical bond with their cars. And if you take care of something, it'll definitely
Mm-mm.
last.
Tama.
That's why I'd say, safe to say, actually, right now, as to where we're at now in liking cars and being enthusiasts, I don't think we can possibly have just one favorite. That's why I can just go
Exactly.
on all day with my dream cars now.
And yeah, we became more diverse with cars, right? Like
Mm,
apart from of course American muscle cars, like we also learned how to appreciate vintage Japanese cars, SUVs,
yes.
So yeah, uh, since you mentioned about the Need for Speed Underground, Need for Speed, and Fast and
Furious
the
and
Furious.
Furious.
So yeah, that's also one of the things that got me into cars, like Need for Speed Underground 2.
S- Especially
I
our
grew up.
favorites.
Riders on the Storm,
Storm.
right?
Yes. And that iconic 350Z.
Yes, the iconic 350Z. And you know what? For some weird reason, I would treat Need for Speed Underground to like my driving simulator.
Same, when I was a kid, like I would for some reason pretend that it was real life traffic, especially
Yes,
when take the consequences and just fly away when hitting a car.
yes, and yeah, the Toyota Corolla, the A86 there.
Oh
I
my
would,
God,
I would
it's my
be
favorite.
delusional about that car being my car. Like I would pretend that it is our Corolla. You know.
Likewise, especially with the Lancer there, or actually even the Mustang. I would always want to pick the Mustang in that game.
Ako naman, I would normally pick the Toyota Corolla, then the Nissan 350Z.
To mention, remember it was the only Need for Speed game that had dyno tuning, so we really
Oh
learned
yes.
raw tuning from that game and how to
Mm-mm,
take care of a car.
exactly. And another wait, where else? another TV show
Mm.
overall, and I don't know if you know Chip Foos.
Oh yes, yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, I grew up obsessed with him, sketching his prototype of what he will build on that resume mod of a American muscle car, right?
Mm-mm.
Like he would sketch it with different, media. He would even use an airbrush for his sketch, like I dreamt
Mm.
of, being like cheap foos.
Actually, I see it in you now. Wherein you actually tried to create your sketches into reality
Oh,
somehow
yes,
for some of your model
and yeah.
kits.
And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I am I am like obsessed with, painting and drawing cars growing up. Like
Yes.
my mom would always tell me, puro kotse na lang dinodrawing mo or puro kotse na lang yung
Yeah. Same actually when I was a kid, but I was never good at drawing. It's more of like I just love drawing anything, just cars.
Mm-mm. Like watching, Cheap Foods doing his thing, like dun din ako kumukuha ng inspiration sa kanya,
Mm-hmm.
from his car sketches and whatnot. And I wanted to be like him growing up.
Yeah, as for me, I want it to be like two people mainly, which is Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. I guess you can see it from my shaved head and with my wide smile and my love for cars. That I'm basically both of them in one person. Same way as I see him in you.
Yes. And
You
what
know.
a nostalgic episode, isn't it?
Yeah, and as we put this to a close, it just comes to show, learning from this episode that the childhood really hits us most in terms of who we are today.
Yes, it is our like it's like what do you call this? They are the roots of
Mm-mm.
why we grew up obsessed with these certain, car culture, why we became obsessed with cars in the first place.
Yes, and I guess it's also the eras that we're from as kids, because as
Yeah.
kids we came from really a humble start. Nothing was really
Mm-mm.
handed to us so much, so we learned how to really appreciate, and that's why now we really want to bring back, the moral values of really loving every car
Mm-mm.
owner, because that's what we were taught to appreciate the most back
Exactly.
then, especially with our cars. Yes, and the movies that we grew up with.
Yes, Fast and Furious. And yeah, Initial D. I
Initial
forgot.
D, not to, man. That's one show. That was my very first and favorite anime ever
Actually,
for
yes.
anything.
That is actually the also one of the reasons why I love Japanese cars. Initial D.
Same.
And yeah, apart from watching those vintage TV commercials on YouTube wherein I would sneak into my sister's room just to watch YouTube.
As for me, I'd always ask my grandmother for her MacBook, which I accidentally wrecked. I'm so sorry, Grandma, for accidentally wrecking your MacBook
Oh.
because the fan got wrecked. Because I would spend hours and hours watching initial D episodes, actually.
But
You
yeah.
know, But yeah, putting this to a close, definitely. If I could revisit my childhood again, I would do it one
Mm,
more time.
same. I wish I could re-download Need for Speed Underground on my MacBook, but I don't, well, this is for work purposes now.
It's okay. I actually have a copy in this laptop that I'm borrowing from our friend Carl. If you want, you can play with it at any time.
But no, I love my MacBook. But yeah, thank you very much for this rather nostalgic episode. So yeah,
Yes.
this is a wrap. See you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Upstream, are you with me? Round up, rainbow.